Thank you very much for joining me on this learning journey. My name is Joshua, and in today's video we'll talk about factors in R. But before we dive into what we have for today, let me take a mind back to the video I did on variables in R, where I provided a simple definition to variable as nothing but housing for data. And then we talked about the two types of variables that we have: the numeric variable and the categorical variable. The numeric variable is of two types, continuous or discrete in nature, and the categorical variable, which will be our focus for today, is of two types, nominal or ordinal. And so our interest in this particular tutorial is to understand how R deals with categorical variable using this very important data structure called factor. Now let's take, for instance, we collected an information about the level of education of 10 random people, and the responses we got from these 10 people are stored in a variable called grade. So if I run what we have on line 4 and you look to the global environment, you would see now that we have a variable called grade, and the class is of character, having just 10 information. So the concept of character tells us now that R does understand that these particular variables, the information we have collected from these 10 random people, are of different levels, unique levels. And these levels could either be primary, secondary, or university. And so the best way to make R understand that they are of unique levels is to use this function we are talking about today, called the factor function. And so I created a new variable called grade underscore elf, and so we use the factor function, and the argument it takes in this place is the grade, the variable called grade, that is of the class character. And so if I run what we have on line 6 and then I check, if you look at the global environment, the result is already there, that this is now seen as categorical variable, and that is why you have it as factor, the class, with 3 levels: the primary, secondary, and the university. So if I run what we have on line 7, it's just printing out the same thing like what we have seen already on the global environment. So if you check well the levels that has been printed out by default, you would understand that R arranged the levels alphabetically from primary P, and then X, and then U. So but it is possible for us to change the order of this arrangement by saying, now look at what we have on line 9. So a new variable is created called grade underscore R, and so we still use the factor function, and we supplied the argument, the first argument, which is the variable that we intend to convert from character to factor, which is the grade, and then here we supply a new argument called levels. And so we are using levels because we have the intention to change the order of the initial level that comes by default. And so because we have 3 unique levels, don't forget this particular function standing for vector, where we have to combine 3 things, more than 2 things together. And so what we are combining in this case is the first level, university, secondary, and primary. So if I run this line of code and then I check grade R, which is already obvious on the global environment, you would see now that this is a factor with 3 levels, and the levels are different from what we have for grade F. In this place, it is now university, secondary, and primary, as against what we have by default, primary, secondary, and university. So if I run this, you would see exactly the same thing we have seen already on the global environment. So there is a function that can directly make us get the unique levels we have for whatever kind of variables or columns we are working with in our data set. So the function is from the base package levels, and then we supplied the argument grade underscore R, and then it shows us the new one that we have rearranged in the form university, secondary, and primary. So it is possible, let's take for instance, you instead of writing the entire levels in full, you want to abbreviate them. You can do this by supplying a new argument called labels. And so we create a new variable called grade underscore a on line 13, and we use again the factor function. We supply the argument, which is the variable that is of the class character grade, and then we say labels. We supply this label, putting them inside the vector function. We have prime standing for primary, sec for secondary, uni for university. So if I run this entire line of code and then I check grade underscore a, you would see now that we have prime, sec, uni, sec, pri, sec, pri, sec, pri, and the unique levels are primary, secondary, and university. So it is possible for you to index the information that we have for the first respondent, the first person that supplied us the information about his or her level of education. And so this first person is saying that the lowest level of education he has is primary, and then if you say let's get for the first three, and then you will see the first three says prime, secondary, and university. In this case, we only have one person who says he's having the highest level of education to be university, just one person in the entire variable. Now it is possible we do everything we have been doing since just using a single line of code. So in this case, I said you have to run everything again in line 4, but there is no need, because what we have in line 4 is the variable grade that is of the class character, and we still have it available on the global environment, and there is nothing similar to it. So we can just go ahead to what we have on line 19. And so if you see what we have on line 19, we are creating everything using a single line of code. So we store this result in a variable called grade underscore all, and so we use the factor function again. We supply the argument grade, which is the variable, and then we have the levels: university, secondary, and primary. This is different from the default arrangement. So then again, we want to abbreviate it, and then we say labels. We combine them together: uni, sec, and primary. So if you run this entire line of code and then you check grade underscore all, you would see now that we have the same result like what we have been doing before. Don't forget I said categorical variables are of two types. It could either be nominal or ordinal. And so for nominal, the order does not matter. The order does not matter. So let's take for instance that we want to check if this particular variable grade underscore all is already ordered or not, whether it is nominal or ordinal. So now what I'm doing in line 24 is to see the first response we have, then I want to see if I can perform some kind of logical operation on it, and I'm asking myself a question now that the first information we collected from the first person out of the 10 population that we administered a questionnaire to. Now I'm asking, is it less than what we have in the information from the third person? Now if I run this line of code, there is an error. There is an error because this is not ordered at all. So it is when it is ordered that we can say this is greater than this is less than this is less than that. And so for us to now turn this particular thing to an ordered categorical variable, now what we just need to do again, in addition to what we have been doing before, is to add a new argument called ordered, and you set it to be true. By default, this particular thing is set to false. So now I create a new variable. No, not a new variable. I'm reassigning to the old variable called grade underscore all, and then I use the factor function. We're already used to this. We supplied the variable grade, then we put the levels. We are changing the level from the default university, secondary, and primary, and then we have the label, the abbreviation for university, uni, sec, and pri, and then the final argument that makes us understand if this is an ordinal variable is the ordered. and we set it to be true. So if I run this entire line of code now, and then I check grade underscore all, you would see now that the level is quite different from the way the levels of the previous examples we have been doing have been written. Here we have uni less than, secondary less than, primary, and so what it's saying now is that there is a difference between uni, sec, and primary. So let's take for instance that this particular thing now has to do with income level. So you understand now that someone who has university level of education would be paid well compared to someone who have secondary, compared to someone who have primary. And in this case, we can now ask that question. For instance, before we ask this question, let's have, what do we have in the first line? We have grade 1 is primary. The next response is grade 3. If we run this, it is university. If you check what we have on this console, you will see now that what we are comparing now is the initial grade that is of character class, and that is why you see it being quoted, and that is not what we are going to do, because if we do this, it's quite different. We are comparing characters. So I'm going to say grade underscore all, same thing to what we have on line 24, and then I'm comparing it against what we have on the third position. So if I run this, you would see now that this is giving us false. Now grade all 1 is less than grade all 3. So now this is possible because we already have this particular variable turned to an ordinary categorical variable. So this is basically how we can actually deal with categorical variable in R using this very important data structure called factor. Thank you very much for creating time to learn with me, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. For those of you that are watching for the first time, I would implore you to subscribe so you get notified of the next video. Thank you very much once again. God bless you. Bye.